Zach. Good to see you again, my friend.
Hey, Leighton. Thanks for having me back on.
Absolutely. It's been a minute, so why don't you give us a little bit of your backstory and tell us what you do, just for the new guests in the audience.
Yeah, sure. So I my undergraduate is in microbiome, and I went on to grad school where I'd studied environmental science and engineering. So I have a PhD in that. In grad school, I learned a lot about microbial ecology, and pretty much my specialty or my expertise was doing microbiome sequencing, so DNA analysis for bacteria and fungi. After grad school, I got a grant to study the microbial ecology of vermicompost. So I led a study looking at the bacteria, mostly the bacterial communities in a bunch of different vermicomposts from around the country. And since then, I've kind of spun that out into my own business, where we provide mostly compost testing for bacteria and fungi. I'm getting a bit into soil health these days, though, and trying to really make the connection between compost and agriculture and soil health and all of that good stuff. So we've just started consulting on a soil health grant out of UC Davis, with also partnering with Biofiltro, which is a company that does kind of water treatment with worms. And it's kind of, they have a trickling filter with wood chips that they run mostly agricultural wastewater through. And in the process, kind of create this vermi product or vermicompost. And so we're applying that to 12 different fields in California and Washington. And that study is going to be over 5 years. Last year was our first year of sampling, our baseline sample. So I just have those samples at the sequencing center now. We should be getting some data from that. And yeah, I guess in the last year since we've talked, we added fungal analysis to our offerings. We started with bacteria testing. We always wanted to do both, but it was just kind of overwhelming to try and understand kind of both domains of life all at the same time. There's just such a huge diversity of microorganisms in compost and in soil. I was a little overwhelmed, so I took a step back and got the bacterial testing bacterial communities kind of figured out, and understanding what they've all been doing. And I guess in 2025, last year, I started doing the same with fungi and just seeing what was in there and going through all the organisms and figuring out what is what. And yeah, we've just been trying to automate those reports. Our business has been growing, which has been great. We just became overwhelmed with trying to get all the analysis done. So I have a former colleague and friend who's been working on that for me. So we should be able to just kind of generate these reports in about an hour once we get the sequencing data back, and just kind of point a script at the files, and out pops out these reports. So yeah, that's pretty much what I've been up to, I guess, since we last talked. I think maybe it's a year and a half, maybe almost 2 years ago now.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure, other than our work together on the side, right. It was about 2 years ago since you last been on. So you've been busy, clearly. So tell me more about this grant. Are you ever going to come out here for it, or are you just pretty much doing it remote?
Oh yeah, I went out to California last year. Went out to Davis last spring. So I guess about pretty much a year ago now. We visited the farms, met everybody. It's being led by Christina Lazcano and her postdoc Halima. And yeah, we just did baseline samplings, and we did the first application in the fall. I got a lot of experience of just sampling agricultural fields and farms and experimental design, just kind of that hands-on stuff. And so we're doing microbiome analysis, but also other kind of standard soil health analyses along with it, like water infiltration, moisture, all of the nutrient analysis as well. And we'll also, I believe, be getting kind of a yield analysis input and data from the farmers as well with each year of the crops. And there's, a control plot and a treatment plot for each farm. So control is just regular conventional fertilization, and the other one is no fertilization except for vermicompost. And we're applying, I think, somewhere between 3 and 10 yards of vermicompost. Is it yards or tons? Maybe tons of vermicompost per acre. So pretty significant amount. And we're just starting to get some of the data, and now we should have our first year of our kind of background analysis coming up, getting that put together in the next couple of months. And this year we're skipping testing, and then the next couple of years we're going to do some more testing, and it's a 5-year long study. So the 5th year is just kind of putting all the data together. But yeah, I have, 232 samples is the number of samples we took the first year. So it's a pretty huge project. It's pretty complicated just because it's 12 different farms, all different kind of soil conditions, different crops. I'm a little worried. It's sometimes these studies just get a little overwhelming with the amount of variables you're dealing with, but we're hoping to see some trends. That's kind of why it's a 5-year long study, that maybe we all the farms start trending kind of one direction, and we'll start seeing something and can say something. But yeah, we're still in the early phases.
Where are the farms located? SoCal?
No, most of them are around Davis. So they're like all in the Central Valley, mostly small towns around Davis and Sacramento, and then that's like half of them. And then the rest are in Washington. It's mostly orchards. We have a lot of perennial crops. We're studying almond orchards, vineyards, apple orchards up in Washington. We have a couple of annual smaller scale farms that we're testing, but that was really a challenge finding farms that did annual crops that wanted to participate.
What annuals were you doing?
Oh, it's a mix. I think we have the one I know that's in Davis. He does a mix of everything. So it's going to be, and he like rotates his crops. So it'll be a little challenging to get a handle on at least things like yield, but hopefully we'll see some differences in the soil.
So interestingly enough, you're going down what I want to call the largest movement right now. I mean, the buzzword was regenerative agriculture, and now it's soil health. So I think kudos to you for catching that wave early on, because they're already starting to try to hijack regenerative agriculture. There's a company out now that from Syngenta that's offering a product that is supposed to improve soil health, but it actually wipes out the soil biome completely, zeroes it. So you're required to use synthetics. And then they require that you do yearly applications. And the half-life of this product, which the EPA has already approved, is 5 years.
Wow.
And it's toxic to humans.
Wow, I have not heard about this. But yeah, it doesn't sound good.
And their whole marketing program is all regenerative agriculture, right? So how they're getting away with that? I mean, we know money.
Yeah, it's like kind of one of the problems with regenerative agriculture is there is no clear-cut like system or definition, so anybody can kind of like hijack it. But at the same time, it's kind of nice because agriculture is so kind of context dependent that maybe people living in different areas growing different crops need to do different things, and there is no one way to do it. But yeah, that's kind of a bummer that hopefully people just stay informed and know what's going on, and the farmers are kind of understand it as well.
doing their due diligence before they just randomly apply stuff.
Right.
Yeah, it's so bad that in 5 years, the toxicity level of the soil will be uninhabitable. People will not be able to walk on it or be around it.
Gosh.
It's horrific. But I hope that there's enough pushback on this. I mean, I know that RFK Jr. has been out in the Midwest talking about the farmers' revolution. They're basically saying enough. They're putting people into play in Washington to try to really slow this kind of whitewashing or greenwashing from occurring.
Yeah.
And so that side of it's good that there's finally becoming some pushback on this. In the same regard, the guys with all the money are just out competing us for right now.
Yeah, it's hard to beat that kind of marketing and network they already have going for them.
Yeah, and let's face it, Syngenta is no joke. They're just probably $1 trillion company.
Yeah.
But let's keep it positive. So back to the soil types. Yes, it's very interesting out here in California that you have such a mix of different types of soil. Like even in the Central Valley, I mean, there's probably 20 different types, even though that was all just the bottom of the lake at one time.
Yeah.
I think as the lake receded, kind of changed the textural buildup of the different profiles. And I think the hardest thing that I've learned about working in SoCal, whether Central Valley or down here, is that the crusting, like you I'm sure you saw what I'm talking about. You can't even get your finger to penetrate it.
Yeah, and the farms were all just very, like, it was really eye-opening to be on the ground and just seeing how like heterogeneous everything is. Like one plot was like newly planted, newly tilled, and yeah, there are places where you could stick your whole hand in the ground because it was just kind of tilled up. But then you have like the alleyways between the crops where the tractors are driving on, and it's super hard. You could barely stick a penetrometer in there.
Yep.
And so depending on like where you sample within in that field, just by a few feet, you could have drastically different kind of conditions. And also the sampling got delayed by a week because we had a huge rainstorm come in the week before. And then so when you're trying to do these like kind of time series of samplings, like how saturated the soil is with water, depending on the weather, is going to affect, soil properties as well as microbiome communities. So I was like, oh man, like I see why these studies are so challenging when you get to this kind of scale.
Agreed, 100%. And then you add, the weather in, right? It's like, oh God, that's a huge variable in itself. And, we've been blessed out here for the last 3 years. We've been getting rain on a pretty consistent basis. One of the riverbeds that when I first arrived here, I never saw water in it for 3 years. And right now it's still flowing pretty solid because of the rains we had, 3 weeks ago.
Yeah,
we had a little one, just a dusting recently, but it was like 3 or 4 weeks ago we had a decent rain. So it goes to show you how much the soil system can store, because it's so vast with all the mountains and stuff. But again, without that rain, you're fighting, salt penetration, chloride toxicity. The wells are just all, pretty much effed up at this point. So it's a challenge for farmers.
Yeah, we're pretty screwed this year, I think, in Colorado and a lot of the western states. California is probably one of the few states that actually got a good amount of rain this winter. I know it kind of came on a bit late, but we have like some of the lowest snowpack in history right now in the Rockies. Like alfalfa and hay prices are already going through the roof just because there's not enough water to grow them. So places like Arizona, Colorado, I think north of us as well, are having some issues. So it's going to be an interesting year this year for farmers in the Midwest and around here.
Yeah, we had a very interesting winter in the essence that we did get a great snowpack, but then we had a heat wave in like
That's right.
February that just wiped them out. Everything was on the mountain all at once.
Yeah, my brother-in-law is a like mountain manager at one of the ski resorts in the Sierras, so he had a lot to deal with, I think, starting in January, but then I think when sometime in March, like it just kind of all vanished.
Yep. Way too quickly.
Yeah.
So one extreme to the other.
Yeah.
Anyway, so back to soil types. Like, how do you like establish any kind of parameter on health when you have a crust, a compacted crust? I mean, it's hard to even get samples, let alone establish.
Yeah, I mean, the soils we were working with were not too crusty. Most of them were tilled. I don't think most of the farms we're working with are conventional farmers. So they till, they kind of keep that crust away just for weed suppression. So and like I said, we were kind of sampling closer to where the perennial crops were, the trees, the vineyards were. So it wasn't too compacted in those areas. At least to the farms I visited, I only went to a handful of them, so I can't speak to everything else.
Got you. Have you noticed a pattern in the diversity? Or you? That's right. You said you.
We're not. I was hoping to have some data by now, but we had some. I'm still waiting to get paid so I can start the sequencing. The samples are sitting at the sequencing center right now. Wow. So yeah, I can't. But yeah, it's gonna. I think how it's going to play out is each farm is going to be a little bit unique, which is why we're taking these like whole year of baseline samples and between control and treatment and just well, I mean, the first question is how similar is everything from the start, and then we'll hope to see them, I guess, change over the years. We'll have 4 years of application, and I think everyone knows now it takes quite a long time and a lot of effort and inputs to start really changing the soil. So yeah, I think what I'm hoping to see is we'll see some kind of trends all going in the same direction from all of our treatment plots, and maybe they'll start converging a little bit, maybe with kind of soil properties as well as microbial communities, and that would be really cool. I think that would be like the best case scenario for this.
So you did one application on each farm. Are you going to be doing more applications over the next few years?
Yeah, every year we did. We sampled in the spring and then did our first application last fall, and then so every fall we'll be doing subsequent applications. So this year no testing, but application in the fall, and the same plots, and for the next couple years after that we'll be doing applications and testing as well.
So the reason for the fall application is because it's before the rains. You're hoping to get it washed out.
Yeah, that's a great question. That was up to a lot of debate about when to do it. I think it makes a little bit more sense maybe to do it in the springtime, but the fall application I think just works a little bit better with the farmers and their schedule. Trying to do the application and the sampling all in the springtime, it was just a little bit kind of difficult. And I think also applying in the fall, you're right. You get some rain and you'll get a little bit of time for that application to, mineralize and biologically break down and get a little bit more integrated into the soil. So we might get a little bit more kind of homogeneous sampling and less variability. But yeah, I was kind of pushing like, oh, maybe we should be applying this stuff in the springtime, especially if you wanted to see more of a reaction from the crops. If things like phytohormones in the vermicompost that would be like kind of more immediately affect the plants. I don't think they'll have that big, they'll probably be gone by the springtime. And, maybe some of those more soluble, biologically available nutrients in the vermicompost we're applying that might get like bound up in the soil and not be immediately available again. But yeah, it's just kind of how it all worked out with the logistics of working with 12 different farms. Was thankfully I didn't have to deal with any of the communication with the farmers and setting it all up. It was a huge undertaking, just kind of wrangling them all together, getting them all on the same page, figuring out all the plots, figuring out all the how they currently, run their farms. Farmers are just incredibly busy people and have a lot going on, and trying to get some consistent communication between all of them was difficult.
A challenge, to say the least.
Yeah.
That was a good point, is that, there's pros and cons to both. Like, I would have said, hey, because they're all irrigated, do it in the spring so you get the plant reaction in the summer. Right. Mm-hmm. And the farmer's not in the middle of harvest, which he will be in the fall. Now, if they wait till after the harvest is complete,
yeah, it'll be post harvest, like a late fall, maybe even early winter, really.
Which can be difficult in the Central Valley, dude, because they get snow up there. So we'll hope for the best for these guys, but the ground doesn't quite like freeze like a rock like it does in Colorado and New England, but you're going to get a lot of potential loss of organisms that are sensitive to temperature under those conditions. But again, everything's a learning curve, right? All of this is a learning at this point. I mean, it's great to be alive. It's great to have these tools. We're setting the table. We're building the railroad tracks for the future of these farmers and people in the next generation that are continuing the work, because we'll have done the heavy lifting at this point, really give them a roadmap to how to do this.
Yeah, that's really the goal of the study, is just try and get some data and evidence and some experience with the farmers, and and even how it's being applied is going to be maybe a little bit different. I think most of it is being applied with kind of like a manure spreader, so it's going to be more of like a top dressing. Maybe some of them are going to be tilled in. I have to go talk to. I wasn't there for the application or anything, but just I need to talk to him and see like how did this all work out, and
that's a really, like, all of the metadata behind this is going to be really critical for you guys to make intelligent decisions about how best to advise future applications and future uses.
Yeah, for sure.
I mean, I wanted to ask you that, like, are they side dressing? Are they liquefying it, spraying it? Like, what is?
Yeah. I've been really, actually a little bit of a side thing, but I wrote a grant with a local farmer around here for a vermicompost application on his like small no-till organic farm, not certified organic, but pretty much organic, and he's interested in getting into worms. And we thought that doing like a vermi, what do you call it? Like a vermi, like sludge kind of.
Okay. So not a tea.
Not a tea. We're not like gonna even minimally filter it out. But I guess a slurry is the word I was looking for. And but you know how they do like manure slurry injection onto crops, kind of the same way, kind of doing the same thing, because like, I've been kind of messing around with teas and extracts here and there myself, and I just feel like you're losing a lot if you're just kind of just making a tea. And like, what do people do with all the leftover stuff that didn't go into the tea? I feel like there's still a bunch of nutrients and a lot of carbon in there that is just going to waste. Or I always just throw it in my garden, but So we were kind of discussing it, and we wanted to do like a mini like slurry vermicompost slurry injection study, which is similar to an extract, but we're going to make and I think this grant didn't get funded, but we're still hoping to do something on a smaller scale with them this year. And we're actually getting into like verma wash, like a verma wash system. I don't know if you're familiar with that. I've kind of just started learning about it myself, but it's kind of the Australian way of vermicomposting, how they do it over there, where they have like their vermicomposters, and then they kind of wash it out with water, which is kind of frowned upon in the US. People are really think that too much moisture is going to kill their worms or something, but I think this actually originated in India. But you have like your kind of vermicompost bin, right? And then you have a bit of a filter, finer mesh filter on the bottom, or back in the day, they'd use kind of just like rocks, and they would just kind of flood it with water and then collect basically the extract or the wash that came out of it. And theoretically, it should be filled with like microorganisms and all the soluble nutrients, all the soluble carbon. So kind of the best part of the compost, in my mind, gets extracted out with the water, and then you apply that to your field. And it's just kind of a lot from a farming perspective. And this was meant to be kind of like an on-farm system that's just really easy, and you not have like all the sifting, all the stuff that goes along with the normal vermicompost operation, and just like using that liquid, either running it through your irrigation system or applying it, and then you take the vermicompost when the system's done and just mix it into a slurry and apply the slurry. We're going to build like a small slurry application system with like a trash pump and just kind of pump it out before seeding in the spring. So yeah, those are some of the stuff I've been thinking about for applying vermicompost or compost. And I think if you do top dress your vermicompost, you should always be like watering it in or doing it before the rains. Like you were saying, you want any of the like really good soluble stuff in the microorganisms really to get down into the root zone of your soil.
Well, you might find this interesting. Back in 2014, I did a bunch of slurry studies.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. And what we noticed was that if you did not till it in, or you did not inject it, which the injection process was a nightmare because of the particulate size. It was very difficult to get the pump to pump hard enough or create enough pressure that an open-ended half-inch pipe could like jet a hole down into the soil.
Yeah, we weren't even thinking of truly doing like injection. It was more like broad fork it, because it's a small farm, and then you get some kind of holes and aeration in the soil, and then you just kind of spray it over the top. So more like a top dressing after broad forking was our plan, because like you said, and injecting it into the soil would be really cool, but especially here in Colorado with our like hard clay soil, there'd just be
it's a nightmare.
Yeah.
Nightmare. We actually worked with a company, I think they were out of Chicago, that had built this wheel. You know what tines are, right? The forks. Mm-hmm. All right. Yeah. So these are big, thick tines. They were like a pipe inside of the pipe, because the tine had to penetrate into the soil, and if it hit a rock and not bend over and all this. So it was kind of an engineering masterpiece. I was really impressed with what this guy built. But he dragged this behind his tractor, and he had a 250-gallon tote sitting on top of it for the weight to keep the thing down. And we put slurry in that, and then he injected it that way. And that was probably the best results we got. The ones that we just sprayed on the top, caked, crusted, and killed the soil. Literally. It locked all the oxygen out.
Yeah.
So that didn't work. The tilling worked better. But the problem was that even after we loosened the soil up and sprayed the slurry, we had to go back and kind of like disc it in so that the moisture and the organisms were now protected to some degree.
Yeah.
And that wasn't really cost effective. What else did we try? We tried different viscosities.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Heavy sludge versus,
Yeah.
more of an extract. The extract worked good, but as soon as we got to a certain viscosity, it caked. It turned into like this layer.
Yeah.
Then it flaked up. Like you've seen like desert, or not desert soil, but like a dry lake bed. It's
Yeah.
like alligator skin. Well, this looked like alligator skin, except for everything curled up on the edges. So,
yeah, I can see that.
Yeah, so we lost a lot of stuff that way. We tried going back after application and doing a water application.
Mm-hmm.
That helped to some degree. I think the best combination we came up with was till, apply, and then come by with a water truck and like hose it down.
Hose it down. Yeah.
But even that, it went anaerobic to some degree. We had a lot of ciliates and other anaerobes. Some facultatives, which I'm fine with, but I just don't like to see a tremendous amount of ciliates because they eat the flagellates and we're going backwards, not forward.
Yeah.
Anyway, it was a real struggle, and I ended up leaving that probably 1 or 2 year study, saying, you know what, FTs, you're too weak.
Yeah, I'm kind of there with you too.
I want to see suspended solids. I want to see chocolate water is what I call it.
Yeah.
And I get incredible results with it. Whether I inject it, top spray it, there's enough moisture to get it down. And I don't have to do a water application after. I generally tell clients, like, hey, if you're in a crusty soil, you got to open it up for me. So you got to do a heavy water event before I apply. And it wouldn't hurt to do a small water application or an irrigation event after it. And, even if they don't do the one after, we still get great results with the water, opening the soil up first. And I think overall the best result we ever get is always putting down compost, putting down chips, and then applying a compost extract because it just sinks down in there and attaches to the compost. But again, most people can't afford to do that, especially on huge scales.
Yeah, all of this is really, really hard to scale, and that's kind of why we're partnering with Biofiltro, because they have been kind of scaling it, and just because their water treatment kind of decentralized water treatment systems have been growing a lot in California and Washington. So they're one of the few, like, kind of, I guess, operations that are decentralized enough, like across a large part of agricultural areas, to use their product. But yeah, and I've been kind of researching a lot about just like the agricultural, like the United States agricultural, like nutrient cycles, like how it works now, and like why aren't more people using manure and like even like organically applied, just straight kind of manure that hasn't been composted, or the lagoons, the manure lagoons, a liquid part of it. It's like just as bad really as applying synthetic fertilizers, because you get a lot of runoff, you get a lot of volatilization, and probably half the nutrients are lost. You have manure just sitting around weathering, but a lot of those nutrients are just leaching into the soil wherever it's sitting, or again volatilizing off before it's applied. And really the reason why manure isn't used more is that it's more of a logistics issue. You have all these animal operations that are heavily concentrated, and sure, the farms around those operations are really fertile. They use the manure, but at some point it just gets too difficult to truck manure. You can't truck manure across the whole country to deliver it out to the farms in the Midwest, because it's just not economically viable to be doing that. So,
what always blew me away was in Vermont, right after the spring floods, and all these farmers are basically farming in floodplains, and so they keep their manure in a lagoon over the winter. Horribly anaerobic, just stinks.
Yeah, tons of methane come, and that's why Biofiltro has been doing so well, is because they get a lot of carbon credits from California for basically mitigating methane emissions.
Yep. And then so they'll often spray it, right after mud season, but before you really get into the rainy season. Like we have, what is it called? April showers, bring May flowers. That was always the term in England. And so they'd go out right after the mud calmed down. They'd spray the shit and stink the whole town. It was horrific.
Yeah.
Like the locals are used to it, but as an outsider, you can't even hardly breathe. It's that bad. And they do that right before the spring rain, and then the rains would come, and like you said, all of that would just wash into the river. And it was just like horrifying to think about the environmental impact that these farmers were having. And I talked to some about pelletizing. One guy aerating it, and he basically he'd set up his aerator on his lagoon to try to keep some oxygen in there.
Yeah.
And people would come by and shoot his aerator because they didn't like the smell. Every friggin' other day he was out there, trying to fix the pump, and finally he just gave up. He's like, this is ridiculous. So that didn't work, and the only other option they have is to dry it, which I can't wait to talk to you about what this company you partnered with is doing. Was to dry it out, but that costs energy. And then pelletizing, that's energy, and then what you get for it, you can't compete with the pelletized synthetic fertilizers.
Yeah,
so you lose money. So we really boxed these poor farmers into a corner by allowing big ag and big chemical companies to take our waste products, turn it into a fertilizer. They should be paying us to use that. If you use a synthetic, they should be paying us hundreds of dollars an acre to use their shit. But our government has allowed this to continue since the Great Green Revolution in the 40s, 50s.
Yeah, so, I mean that's what really got me into this was like all the water pollution that comes from agriculture. That was really what I was studying in grad school, and was like urban water pollution. And then like halfway through grad school, I realized like agricultural pollution was really about 80 to 90% of the pollution. And I'm like, whoa, why is nobody working on this? But yeah, I think I kind of realistically, I think we are going to have to use some synthetic nitrogen, but just not at the level that we're using now. I mean, there's so many easy ways to just reduce the scale of agriculture and the amount of nitrogen that we're just like dumping on fields. And like pretty much 50% of all nutrients applied to conventionally farmed fields are lost pretty much at application or soon after, either through volatilization or runoff, or things like phosphorus and potassium just get bound up into minerals of the soil and are essentially not really lost, but not biologically available. And it just, it's going to have to change it at some point.
Well, again, the biology is the key. It's all about the biology.
Right. It is. Yeah, that's right.
What I've learned is that, by applying these extracts, especially with the combination I use, worm castings, biocomplete compost, and fish mulch or fish manure, I'm getting the solubilizers out of the fish manure. I'm getting the decomposers and degraders out of the worm castings and the compost. So I'm getting the whole suite of organisms. And that's the key. Like I tell people, like, you don't ever have to fertilize again. And they're like, you're crazy. I'm like, no. As long as you don't fertilize, you will never have to fertilize again, and you'll have better yields and better quality than when you did fertilize. And think of the savings you're going to have. No pesticides, no fertilizers, no applications. And until you show them the nail holes in Jesus' palm, they don't believe you. They literally don't believe you.
And I think if people started treating their soil like a biological reactor, and just like trying to keep that thing churning as much as they can and as optimally as they can. It's easier in some places than others. Like when the ground freezes, like nothing's going to be happening, but you should be wanting those organisms to be like constantly churning out biologically available nutrients for the plants. And if you have those nutrients in your soil and you have enough microorganisms and enough carbon in there to keep things moving along, yeah, I think in most cases the biology should be able to support a lot of farming. Maybe not quite as intensively as we farm today, but you could make the argument that we don't need like 50 to 75% of the agriculture we have in the country now. Like it all, a lot of it just goes towards biofuels, which I think it's been pretty much proven now that just horribly inefficient to grow crops, to make gas to put into cars.
Right.
So,
who came up with
that? And yeah, it's just a handout to grow more corn and soybeans.
And again, it's the handouts to big ag. It's not to the.
It is. Yeah, it's just a handout to fertilizer companies and.
And then now we're also going to be turning the tides in another way, because I think it was some staggering amount, like 80% of the corn and soy that we grow in America went to other countries.
And a lot of it is exported. I'm not sure about. I'm trying to think of the numbers. I just did some research on it, but yeah, it's
ridiculous.
It's like something like around 20% of all the crops grown in the U.S. are exported. I don't know about each crop, but yeah, it is kind of crazy. Like those nutrients are now kind of left our local nutrient cycle, and it's just to subsidize profits for farmers and just distributors. So yeah, I agree. It's like there needs to be some kind of like tax or disincentive for that.
Yeah, and I'm confident to say it's a lot higher than 20%, but maybe it was the combination of export and conversion to other things.
Yeah,
conversion to fertilizers like soy pellets and stuff like that, and that gets shipped out too. So you have to like kind of look at a 1,000-mile view of it all to understand just how bad it is. And there was a guy, Saint or Sir something, I studied in England. He had it figured out. What his recommendation to the farmers was, okay, grow what you need and times it by 50%. The other 50% you return to the soil. So you maintain your nutrient pool. You're not just pulling everything out year after year after year, and causing this, lack of fertility. And I think that makes all the sense in the world. But when you're profit driven, when it's all about the money,
right?
People look at it like, oh, I can't do that. I need to make less money, right? And that goes back to, farmers getting squeezed and the government allowing the machine companies, fertilizer companies, pesticides companies to look at how much they make and then charge them based on that. Like, have you ever heard about insurance, commercial insurance? Basically, they say, open your books. Okay, you make $100,000 a year, we're going to charge you 60. And you're like, how can you charge me more based on my profit? This is like friggin' mafia shit.
Yeah, and it just like encourages less resilient practices and kind of really allows for the form of farming we have, where if their crop fails, it's like, well, okay, whatever, we're insured on it, it doesn't matter. Where in reality it should be like, I really don't want my crop to fail this year, or I'm going to lose a whole bunch of money. And like, yeah, we don't want farmers going out of business, but we can't have them like just maxing yield every single year. Like that it's not a sustainable system. And I feel like right now we're pretty much all available farmland is being used in the United States, and it needs to be cut back just so we have more like resiliency within our farming. If some of our farms crops fail, like we're having probably a really bad summer this year for agriculture, and there just needs to be some like flexibility and leeway built into the system, which is going to mean probably less profits for the chemical and fertilizer companies. But
a couple other pieces of the puzzle is that you can't even get farm insurance unless you're using synthetics.
I've heard that it also dictates how, like, you need to plant by a certain date and you have to manage your farm a certain way to qualify for it. And I agree that, I mean, yeah,
That's ass backwards.
Insurance companies pretty much run the world these days, right? in almost every aspect of our lives. So,
and then the other piece of the puzzle too is that we've got Brazil that's staged to come out of the gate like a charging bull. They are doing regenerative, they are doing biological corn and soy on scales that will blow our minds. Yeah, it's kind of decimating parts of the rainforest and that big savanna they have near Brasilia. But bottom line is, pretty soon, and their cost of labor is a fifth of what ours is. Pretty soon, we won't be able to sell our farm products at that point. And that's going to kind of force what you're talking about, which is farmers walking away from fields and letting them go fallow, because I can't afford the inputs. I can't afford to spend money to not even be able to sell my crop. And so I think that, as the world turns, or the stomach churns, whatever you want to call it, some of these things will be forced into compliance of more of a, all right, let's look at the big picture. How can we make, better products, less expensive, without just destroying everything? I call it mining the planet.
Yeah, no,
it's a mining economy.
It is, yeah. Pretty much all of the phosphorus, all of the potassium is all, like 92% of our potassium comes from Canada. Like that's a huge, could be a huge problem.
And what's crazy too is that we have all kinds of wood-fired power plants. So, dude, back in 2012, I was working with this crazy scientist. I mean, you talk about batshit off the wall crazy, running around with strippers and giant fucking cigarette boats. And, he's in his fucking 70s and 80s, just a partying animal, right? He created something called, it was a way to create electricity out of heat. And it was so efficient that the U.S. government stepped in and bought the patent. I hope it comes to me. But he was taking them and attaching them to, how they have the flares, the flares on landfills and on coal or oil companies and natural gas companies. They have the flares, right? And he would attach one of these machines to the side of their flare, and the flare would pretty much go out if, just barely burn. But he could generate so much electricity with that for essentially free. It really didn't cost much to make. He had a patent on it. And when the government took it over, they screwed up in their language, and it allowed him to continue to manufacture, make and sell them, even though technically their buyout was to prevent him from doing that. But he was doing it. And so I looked at that and was like, think of all of the benefits of, heat extraction conversion to electricity that could have been changing, our environmental impact, whether it's compost facility, landfills, oil.
Even like water treatment plants, some of them have to flare off some of the methane. I know Coors Brewery in Golden was just flaring off some of their extra methane from their water. I think it was from their water treatment or one of their digesters they had. But yeah, I heard about, I think there's one company who made like mobile
ORC, Organic Rankin Cycle.
Oh, okay.
Check that out. Search it. It's still around. You got to deep dive to find it though. And the guy that made that was this crazy scientist. He didn't keep any money in the bank. Everything he had was in gold coins. Right? If he wanted to go shopping, he brought gold coins with him. He would not use paper. He would not keep his money in the bank. I mean, he was fucking radical for, this was like 15 years ago.
Yeah. Well, if If he's still around, I'm sure he's doing well now.
Yeah, we got way off topic. So let's reel it back into. I want to hear more about the company that you partnered with that's doing that on-site water treatment.
Biofiltro, yeah. So they are a growing company, still pretty small. They are originally from Argentina, I believe, is where the company started, and then they opened up operations in the U.S. But yeah, they have a few different designs, but they're mostly making these kind of cement, kind of large, almost cement swimming pool type structures, and they fill them with wood chips, and they kind of have a sprinkler system throughout their huge kind of trickling filter beds, and yeah, they just kind of constantly sprinkle this like somewhat pre-filtered but still organic rich wastewater over the wood chips, and they inoculate it with worms. And so the worms multiply and grow, and they start breaking down all the heavy organic waste that's sprayed onto these wood chips. They've kind of find the sweet spot for worms, but and it's pretty aerobic actually through most of the wood chip depth, maybe even all the way through. So you get some ammonia oxidation, but you don't really get a whole lot of denitrification. So you're still retaining a lot of the nitrogen in there, I think. And yeah, the worms are happy in these systems. And then after about, I think around 5 years, the system, things start breaking down. The worms are eating everything, and it gets pretty like muddy and almost more like a compost. So they have to clean out the whole system, take it, kind of shovel it out with a tractor, and they end up with tons and tons of this like vermicompost, and they let it cure for a bit. It's still pretty wet, so they cure it. Last I talked to them about that, they're still kind of experimenting with their curing process, but with all the worms. And yeah, and then it's an agricultural fertilizer basically that's ready to go. And they've been expanding a lot. They recently had a contract with a pretty large dairy company in California. I'm not sure if they've released more on that yet. It was still kind of in the works when they told me about it. So they've been growing a lot, and they're mostly in the West Coast, California, and Washington.
Can you get us the contact information for them?
Yeah, biofiltro.com. My main point of contact there is usually Patrick Beckett. He reached out to me I've been talking to him for years and done some sequencing with them, and then they're the ones who kind of got me involved with this grant.
Ken, did you pick up on that name? Oh.
Yeah, I'm just trying to pull it up on the other side.
Yeah, let's get them on board here too, because I did some work with New Milford Farms, which is an organic recycler. So they take green waste, grind it up, they make soils. They're part of a really big company out in Ohio, and they called it a biofilter. So the way they compost the green waste is they ran a big oxygen tube in the floor with floor drains. And so they push air through that comes up and oxidizes the compost pile or the green waste they put on top. Now they lose a lot of nitrogen through the oxidizing or volatilizing the compounds. But the problem they have is they also have like a sprinkler system on the ceiling to keep it moist, because what they learned is the composting process will shut down if you oxidize it too much. So they're constantly having to add water. And so the water, which we call leachate, because it's almost pure humic acid, would go out piped, or we call daylighted out, just beyond the parking lot. And the town came in and said, you can't be doing that. Like, look at this giant reservoir of friggin' chocolate, sopping wet mud that's coming out of your system. So they were required to put in a biofilter, which is exactly what you're talking about. They didn't add worms. They just added a shit ton of really coarse wood chips, which helped to keep it aerated and allowed the silt or the leachate to stick to the chips, especially as they start to break down, they just soak it up. Yep. Well, I was there having them blend some soil for one of the projects I was working on down at Greenwich, and they were digging it up, and I was like, oh, dude, look at that stuff. I'm like, well, what is this? Where is it going? And he goes, oh, this is, we got to replace our biofilter every 2 years. And I go, well, what do you do with that? So I thought we just bury it up on the hill. I'm like, oh, don't be burying that shit, man. Put that in a pile on top of the hill. Just don't bury it. I'm going to microscope it today, and I'm going to have you start blending that in soils, because I tend to believe that's going to be loaded with fungi.
Yeah.
Sure shit, dude. The micro slides. Oh, here we go.
Not quite, Ken. I sent you. It's biofiltro with it's an RO on the end instead of ER.
So Spanish almost.
Maybe.
I'm not that good with languages, but anyway, sure shit, dude. This was out of control. It had so much fungi. Like, you put it under the microscope, all you saw was hyphae strands everywhere. There were flagellates, there were amoeba, there were nematodes.
There you go. Yeah, you can see we have one of their systems there.
We definitely got to get them on, Ken. I need to revisit this. And we're working with, ESS. Craig and I have worked with you on some of their stuff. And so they're trying to fool around with taking lagoon water from these, cow lagoons, and trying to run it through the machine to see if they can sop up some of the nitrogen in the biology. Mm-hmm. And so I don't know where the test is at. I mean, this was something we were talking about back in end of last year, fall. And there was all this hype about, we're going to get products sent down. We're going to run it through the mini muncher and see what happens. And I think they kind of dropped the ball on that, but I don't know. But there's a huge need for that up there in that area.
Yeah.
Because typically what they're doing is they're just taking it and spraying it out in the middle of these orchards on certain days when there's not enough wind to move that odor into the local neighborhoods. And so they're just over friggin' loading certain areas of these giant orchards with that material. So where's it going? Right down into the groundwater. Yeah. So the insanity of humanity, as long as we don't get caught doing it, we can continue to do it this way with no thought about the long-term effects of how this is going to, affect the groundwater and also, the surface water, because it's all washes away.
Yeah.
Anyway, so when they harvest it, how are they getting rid of the worms, or how are they treating the worms?
I'm not sure actually how they're managing, or if they are managing like worm removal, if they try and separate out the worms or reuse them. I think they had someone just buying their kind of their end product at like wholesale, but I'm not sure exactly how they're doing. I know they're doing some experiments with it, but I'm not sure if they're like going through and separating out the worms. It was kind of only a few years ago that some of their systems actually kind of reached that mature stage. And they have this really cool what you were showing there, Ken, the shipping container that they turned into like a smaller scale reactor. I know there's some vineyards in California that use that kind of system, but I think that's really cool, kind of a portable, smaller scale system.
Do you think the value of their end product would be similar to a really well-made, well-rounded worm castings?
I don't think they could sell it for as much as like what worm castings typically go for. I know there were some people in the vermicomposting community that was worried they were going to tank the value of vermicompost like nationwide, or at least on the West Coast, just because they can produce so much of it. But yeah, I think kind of my hope is that they sell it for a price that's somewhat affordable for farmers to use it on scale with at scale with their land. I think they produce too much of it to sell it at like a premium price, like vermicompost. Like, man, I try and sell my vermicompost for $10 a gallon, but I think I'll probably have to start lowering that just because there's a lot of smaller vermicompost producers popping up kind of all over the place, which is great. So yeah, I think it'll be. I'm not sure what the price they're selling it for or what they would like to sell it for. I was doing some work for them to try and quantify the beneficial organisms in their kind of end product so they could try and assign some kind of value to it. But I mean, ultimately, it's kind of just supply and demand, right?
So when you tested it, did you see the equivalent to a decent compost or vermicompost, or was it?
Yeah, it was somewhat similar. I don't know if I'm allowed to talk too much about it, actually.
Okay. No problem.
But
I mean, if it takes 5 years, I don't see how they can be that disruptive in the market. Because you guys can make the same volume of them in a year.
Yeah, but they just have a whole bunch of systems all over that would be, producing probably. I think they're getting into the like hundreds of thousands of tons a year kind of output.
Because they have so many machines.
They have a ton of these systems all over the west coast. Like it's pretty massive.
I've never heard of them if they're that big.
Pretty massive operations. Yeah, they've been scaling up quite a bit and not. Yeah, I think they have a map of all their. I think kind of you see on their website, they have a map of like all of their operations, and they're even trying to expand into Europe, I think, as well too.
Gotcha.
So yeah, it's definitely a growing company.
So that was a question that was haunting me since the beginning. Was cost of vermicompost. I mean, it's not cheap.
Right.
And you're telling farmers to put how many yards per acre on it?
Like 3 to 10.
And how thick of an application? Like 2 to 3 inches, or?
Yeah, I think that's about what it comes out to. And it's kind of crazy. Like you hear about percent of carbon and soil, and I did like a rough calculation of how much compost you would have to add to 1 acre of farmland to raise the percent carbon by 1% in the top 6 inches of the soil. You need like 80 tons of compost per acre, just to raise the carbon percentage 1%, which is like logistically challenging and economically challenging for farmers. Like where do you find that much compost to apply? So, and I mean there's just like a lot of manure laying around nearby. But if we're asking all of these farmers and that's again why like a lot of people are doing like cover cropping to raise their carbon, because it does kind of scale a little bit easier than composting does. So yeah, it's a huge economic and logistical hurdle. And I think Biofilter is one of the few companies that actually stands a chance at kind of tackling this. I mean, they are tackling it really. And how do we find other systems, other business models to kind of do the same thing all over the US?
Down here in Southern California, I think we've talked about this, is the green waste problem. So we're on a perpetual growth cycle here. This side of the mountain, the coastal mountains, Central Valley less so. East of the Sierra Nevadas, not even close. So they're taking so much green waste in to these land composting facilities, giant facilities.
Mm-hmm.
They're making mountains of the stuff.
Yeah.
Now they're running it through post-pathogen reduction, which is kind of a joke. But needless to say, they're doing their best they can to handle it. The problem is that when it's immature, it steals nitrogen out of the soil. So they're applying it on orchards and fields and then tilling it in because they know they can't apply it as a top dress to anything, or they're just going to kill the plants. I mean, that's the inside joke, is that they go, these homeowners, they buy a fruit tree down at at Home Depot, and they come get a bag of our compost, and they plant it, and the tree dies, and they blame Home Depot for giving them a bad tree. And by the time they get that tree out and bring the new tree back in, the compost has come to terms with the soil, so it's no longer going to kill anything.
Yeah.
Well, they're like, okay, it was the tree, not the compost. But how do you get rid of these mountains?
I don't know, and I'm like pretty skeptical of like the industrial produced compost, but at the same time, you need a way to scale these operations so it's feasible and economically viable. And I don't have a good solution. I wish everybody did vermicomposting at like a massive scale, but I'm still trying to wrap my head around how to best do that, because there's not a lot of like vermicomposting infrastructure that could tackle just mountains and mountains of manure or mountains and mountains of green waste or food waste.
Let's not even talk about food waste, right?
It's challenging. So
I think I'm gonna have to blow my nose here in a minute.
Okay.
Bear with me. I've prevented myself from coughing, but it's building up in my medicine. All right, so let's roll it back into like the DNA that you're seeing from different vermicomposting facilities. I'm sure a lot of it has to do with the input, like what they're using. Right?
Yeah, I still haven't. I'm getting ready now that I have my analysis scaled a bit more. I'm going to go back and reanalyze everything and run some statistics and get a better overview of like every sample I've tested since I've started the company. But yeah, there are some differences and there are some similarities, and there are some like kind of like microbial communities that I look at and I'm like, this doesn't look great, like I usually look for actinobacteria as like a big indicator of like good and bad. I'm not sure how accurate that is, but
it's spot on.
But when I see a lot, I'm like, all right. And diversity, somewhat. I'm not like, if I see a sample that's like not that diverse, but it's enriched in actinobacteria, bacilli, like these organisms that I've kind of defined as plant growth promoters based on literature. I'm like, it's okay. Your diversity is a little bit low. You have enriched for all these beneficial organisms, and it's just not a whole bunch of just kind of random, somewhat unknown microorganisms. I ran some samples for this lady in Romania. Actually, she was I think doing a thesis study. And she sent me a bunch of samples, and I was like, like this is not looking too great. Are you, do you think it's hard because I don't have like hands on the sample and people kind of tell me what they're doing, but I'm still not collecting like consistent metadata from all of my customers. And it's hard to say, and even like something like a worm. But yeah, I asked her like, so do you think it was like a successful vermicomposting operation or study test that you did? And she's like, no, I don't think so. And I'm like, yeah, it doesn't look like that amazing to me either, from the microbiome side of things. So, but as to what is driving that, I'm not sure. I think some of it could just be like worm density, like how much of the compost is actually like worm castings and has been processed by the worm versus just kind of broken down by microorganisms and just kind of, I don't know,
like more of a compost,
like a more regular compost than a vermicompost. And that's really difficult to kind of say. And I've had, I got some samples from another customer who's running like a kind of seems like a really thorough vermicomposting operation. She's a scientist and like her vermicompost is very consistent. There's like almost 30 to 40% bacteria in our compost, and I was like, wow, like this looks pretty good.
So you like to see actinobacteria?
Yeah, I do. I think it's like the number one plant growth promoting class of microorganism. Like if I had to pick one, that's what I would want to use. There's a lot of them that are used as like commercially available, like in pure culture. They produce a lot of secondary metabolites like biotics. Like the vast majority of all human antibiotics and metabolites derived from microbes to use for human health. The vast majority of them come from those type of microorganisms. It's like streptomyces and they do like everything. They solubilize nutrients. They have huge amount of biocontrol properties. They fix nitrogen. They produce oxen. They kind of do everything, and they're a lot like fungi as well. Similar life cycle to fungi, so they're kind of these branching filamentous organisms. So yeah, that and bacilli I think is like my number 2 class of microbes they're really good at solubilizing nutrients, fixing nitrogen, and so those are the ones. And then nitrogen fixers, and then some of the gamma proteo bacteria. A lot of those ones, I think like I'm blanking on which specific organisms are in there. Is it maybe flavobacteria? Maybe. Those are really well studied and known to be good like root colonizers and endophytes. So, but yeah, definitely not all the communities are the same, but I still haven't quite dialed in on how do you engineer the perfect vermicompost microbial community. I think it has to do with like inputs, moisture, the amount of worms you have, how long you compost it for, like all of that I think kind of plays into the formation of those communities.
That's why most commercial vermicompost companies aren't really that good. It's like you said, it's animal husbandry, right? All of these things, all these factors play into it. And if you're like, what do you call it? Yard cattle or yard feeding cattle stock, those cattle aren't healthy.
Yeah.
So it's all about input and density. Like you said, at too much moisture, you kill them. Not enough moisture, you cause other problems. Oh, I definitely got to blow my nose. Hang on 1 minute. Ken, you know what? Ken, why don't you open up questions while I'm busy, and then I'll be right back. I can barely breathe.
Sure.
Yeah, that's great. I got about 15 minutes, and then I probably got to take off here.
Okay, sounds good. We'll bring our first one up from Farmer Cheryl. How does the vermicompost vary per farm? Is the feedstock in the vermicompost from materials from each farm?
Yeah, that's kind of like what we were just talking about. That it does vary per like vermicompost operation per farm. I get some from farmers, and yeah, it's like there's always kind of conserved organisms, like I was talking about, bacilli and actinos. Sometimes there's not very many bacilli. Sometimes there's not a whole lot of the rhizobiales, which are the nitrogen, the classic legume nitrogen fixers. Those are somewhat variable. Sometimes they're like 10-20% of the community, and sometimes they're not really there at all. Typically there's not a whole lot of anaerobic organisms in vermicompost, so that's good. It's always around like 1 to 3% of the community are kind of anaerobes, which I think is pretty normal. But yeah, like I was saying, I'm not exactly sure. Like I have no recipe for this is how you make the perfect vermicompost. Like I can tell you how I do it and what I think is important. I think having something that controls moisture is really important. I use like shredded cardboard to do that. So you're retaining moisture, but it's not getting too like wet, or the water is just not like running through to the bottom, and then you have to reapply more water to the top. So those kind of things. And I like running like with a really high concentration of worms. So like at the end, it's pretty much all just like vermicompost. It's all vermicast. And even like the sifting, how it's sifted and how it's separated out could be screening for different microorganisms on different type of particles and stuff like that. So yeah, good question, but it's complicated.
Well, her next question actually kind of fits right in with that. Has much research been done on the impact of cover crops on vermicompost? Any cover crops that are highly recommended to use in making vermicompost?
I can't say I've seen. I don't think there's that much research done on the impact of different kind of cover crops or inputs. I would just say make sure it's like shredded up as well as you can get it to make your vermicompost, so it's all breaks down quickly and evenly. But yeah, I don't have any recommendations for choosing cover crops to make vermicompost. But yeah, not a bad idea if you have that kind of composting capacity.
Okay, the next one. Could biofiltra process the manure turning to methane on California farms, and what would they get?
Process. Yeah, so they do process a lot of the dairy lagoon, like holding lagoons, because of the methane, and that funds because they're reducing the amount of methane being emitted from those lagoons by instead running it through there. It's going to just there's probably going to be a fair amount of CO2 output, but I think methane is like something like 23 times more effective as a greenhouse gas than CO2. So you're reducing the greenhouse gas emissions and potential by quite a bit. So and they're actually pretty interested in looking at like what Leighton was talking about, the outflow of their system. They're removing a lot of the organics in the system, and they're trying to see if, as the system matures, is there some value to that water that's coming out the back end of their system, especially as it matures. So I'm doing a small study with them to get an idea of like how their systems are maturing, what's coming out the end. Is there some kind of value that can be kind of like a value added to the end of their waste stream? But it's
Oh, I bet that leachate's dynamite.
I think by the end of, as the system gets going after the startup phase, I think there's a lot of potential uses for that. Yeah.
Well, I know the invisible gardener, Andy Lopez, that's what he uses as fertilizer for his company, is leachate coming from his own worm bits.
Yeah, I think, a lot of people still think leachate is kind of nasty, yucky stuff. I have a blog post on it actually where I tested some of the leachate from my worm bin, and it's different from the microbial community of the vermicompost. It's not that diverse, but I didn't see any. It's more like a microaerophilic community, or maybe a bit of a facultative community there, but no evidence of pathogens, some potentially good organisms, and just like a different community that's what in the vermicompost. So you could add some different stuff to your soil that might be effective. But I think it's just super concentrated and soluble nutrients because it's the water, like we were talking about with the verma wash systems, but you have this really concentrated kind of carbon and nutrient source that's just kind of sitting there as well.
Don't forget
about. So yeah, I think it's really good stuff.
Yeah, don't forget about all the secondary and tertiary metabolites.
Yeah, Yeah, definitely.
That's why Andy uses it. It's for the metabolites.
Agreed.
So the other two questions are more for me and Leighton. So if you have to run, Zach, then just reach out with your contact for that company so I can reach out to them, or you can connect the two of us together so we can see about getting them on to talk more about the system.
Yeah, I can get you in touch with Patrick. I've been meaning to give him a call. Actually, it's been a while since we've talked.
Well, listen, I want to really thank you, Zach, for coming on today and giving us an hour and a half of your time. I know you're a busy guy running a business. So I appreciate
it. And the kids. Don't forget the kids.
I've been working on the yard. We got a big rainstorm coming tomorrow, so I'm trying to get our vermicompost out on our garden and get the lawn done and all of that stuff before the rain hits, so I can relax for a couple days inside.
All right, well, go get your chores done. Again, thank you so much for your time.
Oh yeah, my pleasure. Thank you guys for having me on. It's been great talking to you.
Agreed, my friend. Agreed.
Okay, my friend, have a fantastic day, and we'll get you back here in maybe 6 months or so, and you can give us a further update.
Sounds good. I should have some more data for you.
Yeah, definitely. When you get all your data together and straightened out, it would be great to have you back.
Sounds good. Yeah, I'd be happy to go over that with you guys.
Awesome.
Okay, Zach. Have a great day.
All right, you guys too. Good talking to you. Bye.
So, Leighton, our question is, does Leighton make or show how to make the fish fertilizer, fish amino acid to add to the BioComplete compost and vermicompost?
So I don't, but I recommend, Cheryl, that you go on to Korean Natural Farming. Chris Trump has a wonderful video on making FPJ, which is basically a fish amino acid digest using sugar and raw fish. What I generally do is I'm adding a little bit of fish hydrolysate. So it's basically ground up, not after the oils have been separated. This is a big problem with fish hydrolysate now, is that people realize that they could strip the oils off and convert it into fish meal for fish food for aquaculture. And that's the most important part of those oils. So, and the other problem with fish hydrolysate is it's stinky as all heck. So, typically I'll apply it on the compost and then I'll put the pile, flip the pile up together so that I'm sealing it inside so I don't have to smell all of the odors, number one. And number two, I want to trap those odors on the compost. I want them to soak it up because those odors are volatilized methane, ammonia, and all the goodies that you really want to keep in the compost. So that's the one benefit of the FPJ, is that it there's no odor to it when you're done. It's all locked up in the sugar and in the product itself. So highly recommend, natural farming is Korean Natural Farming. Chris Trump is who I'd probably recommend. He knows what he's doing.
Yeah, I learned actually from Chris on when I did mine. And yeah, Chris has some fantastic videos specifically on that. Now, how about Keith in Fish Brew? Is he still producing materials?
So Fish Brew is running through some issues right now with management, with lack of staff, and Keith basically quit. He's like, you guys are idiots, and I've since then I've sent a couple people over there. And they call me back yelling at me, hey, nobody answers my email. No one answers my phone call. What kind of business is this? So I've just kind of backed off. I know Keith is trying to find another source. There's talk of him taking over the Blue Stream aquaculture place where he used to live. There's talk of him harvesting from another farm on the same water source, not too far away. But he's really super busy with the jobs that he's doing. So he doesn't have the freedom he used to have to run over and, grab samples and microscope them to see, our goal is to make sure that it has diatoms in it, because that's what creates shelf stable fish mold or fish manure. Without the diatoms, it gets stinky really quick. And when it gets stinky, you're volatilizing the things that you want to store. I use my nose for everything. Well, right now I can't, but it really tells me what's going on.
Okay, so your best option, Cheryl, is to make your own FFA, the fish amino acid, or
FA, not FPJ. That's fruit something.
Yeah, I can't think of it off the top of my head. I have some because I've made some, but yeah, I can't. It's not clicking. But okay, our next one again from Farmer Cheryl. Hoping Leighton and Ken can have an episode on biosolids on It's All About the Biology, the good, the bad, and the messy. What do you think, Leighton?
Oh God, that is a very, very dangerous thing. The problem is that there isn't the money, the time, or the logistics to safely test biosolids on a daily basis, because that's what you have to do. Every day, people across the country or the area are flushing their toilets. Same with the hospitals, same with the colleges, and you just don't have any idea what's getting into that stuff. So they did a study on biosolids on Nantucket, which was really crazy. During different times of the year, Nantucket's a very, very wealthy place, extremely wealthy, billionaires only. Hardly any locals left. They had the money to do it because they were trying to figure out what to do with these biosolids, because the wealthy people don't want something toxic being spread all over their properties or be next to it. There are examples of farms in Maine, organic farms that took in biosolids and were basically shut down because of the level of PFAs in the biosolids. So Nantucket, on the back of these kinds of warnings that have been happening for 5 or 6 years now on using biosolids, went a little further, and they went into pharmaceuticals, and along with PFAS. And what they found out was that the level of antidepressants and anti-anxieties were through the roof spring, winter, fall, winter, and spring. And then when the summer came around, that level dropped, and the level of high-grade cocaine went through the roof. That's no joke. You can if you search hard enough, you can find that study. And it just goes to show you that, all right, do you want all these pharmaceuticals on your property? Or worse yet, you want to expose your local animals, potentially pets, to cocaine or any other narcotics like fentanyl? It's scary what's happening. And again, every time, every season is going to be different. Depends on who or what is jacked into that municipality, that water system, as to what you're going to end up with. But anytime people talk about biosolids, now I used biosolids in a landscape, and it worked really well. But nobody was eating that, right? It was not, and it was like we used biosolids and then put sod down on top. We used some biosolids and then put plants and mulch around on top of it. So there wasn't a direct exposure to it in any way, shape, or form. There were no pets in the house. There were no children in the house. So I was not overly concerned about it, but I wanted to play with it to see. Now, this was friggin' 20 years ago. So, again, it probably wasn't as bad as it is nowadays because there's so many more people in so many more concentrated areas. This was in Maine, in a relative, it's basically a summer community. So that the level of volume of all these things were strongest in the summer, but I was using shit that had been aged since the following fall, winter, and spring. So I was not as concerned about it. But yeah, I tell people, please don't even mess with biosolids right now till we figure out how to deal with it. Like, it may have to get cooked, sterilized, burned off all of the potential pathogens as well as the compounds and PFAS and who knows what else is in there. So
yeah,
warning, hazard. Warning, Will Robinson. Warning, Will Robinson.
Now, say it's your own property, and you're gathering this material off your property, you know what's going on your property. With something like that.
Dude, I love composting toilets. I actually took Clivus Multrum. Look them up. They have a dry, human manure composting system, and they're set up in parks all over the country, United States of America, where they don't have water, and they have a little solar fan that basically aerates the manure as it's breaking down and keeps the odors from coming up through the open chute that goes down into it. And I converted it I put a liquid solid separator on it, and then I put a low flush toilet. It's one of those toilets where you push the button and it goes poof. So you're using like a fifth of the water a normal toilet uses. We separated out the black water from the gray water, and then obviously the water that went into that toilet was just black water, and then we basically had to harvest a wheelbarrow or two out of that in spring, and spread it around under the flowers and trees and shrubs. And it was a great fertilizer. And again, I know the people that were using it. They're not, drug addicts or anything else. They're not on a lot of pharmaceuticals. They were very healthy people. So yeah, if you're controlling the inputs that are going in, I'm all about human manure. It's that's been used for thousands and thousands of years. Unfortunately, nowadays you got to worry about the person that's contributing to the human manure. As to whether they're healthy or potentially have, some overuse of pharmaceuticals that can affect your environment. But I wish everybody had a composting toilet in their house instead of having these municipal friggin' systems. But the human, or especially Americans, we're the worst. We're so friggin' hyper scared of everything. Look at everyone hand sanitizes and wears masks and stuff. It's insane. We've lost our minds about this, keeping clean and sterile and viruses and germs and kills 99% of germs. And like, no, you know what? You should be just using vinegar and water clean, not these harsh chemicals, because those are all ending up in the system too. Like every time you scrub your toilet with that blue shit, where do you think it's going? Right? It's just another compound. And the hard part about this is that you get into this biochemistry stuff. Organic chemistry, what's happening when these compounds come together? They're forming whole new compounds and compound chains that we have no idea what the long-term or short-term effect of that being exposed to them are. Because the biology is breaking shit down, but when it breaks stuff down, other things form. So yeah, it's crazy. It's both scary and amazing to be alive at this point in life.
Well, that's what I keep telling the wife. It's a hell of a time to be alive because we get to watch all this. But remember, guys,
front row seats.
What's that?
Front row fucking seats.
Yes.
The next 4 years are going to be mind blowing. Absolutely mind blowing. I'm so grateful that my mom and my dad aren't here to see this, because he would be freaking the fuck out as to what's going on. But anyway, sorry. Go ahead, Ken. Off my soap.
That's why I tell people: observe, don't absorb.
Yeah, good point.
See what's going on and go, holy shit, where's my popcorn in my sunflower seeds? But don't absorb that negative energy. If we stay positive, and there's indicators in the Schumann resonance where the energy field is rising, and that's us being positive, putting out positive energy. And that's where the next 4 years, it's going to be some wild, wild rides, but we got to have the ups and downs on that roller coaster right now.
Yeah, so true, dude. So true. I mean, I don't even want to start talking about it, but you're absolutely right. Like the most important thing is to remain positive. There is some, there's great indication in, the spiritual awareness and awakening of massive amounts of people who are, trying to push this, positive energy and not allowing the negativity to slip into their life. And that's where you need to focus on, is people that are positive, not energy vampires and people that are spewed negative shit. I mean, that's why I'm pretty much reclusive at this point, because, you know, all my friends, everybody, you know, I know just wants to talk about the negative shit. And I'm like, no, you're not going to bring me down. My vibe, I got a nice high vibration. I'm happy. I live in friggin' Southern California, 2 beautiful dogs. I get to get up and do what I love every day. And you're not fucking taking it away from me.
Yeah. When we can choose who we actually associate with, that's, you know, one of the best things. We can choose to be happy during the day and not pay attention to that. And if you're allowing those negative people around you and into your life, then make a choice, whether it's family, friends, you know, etc. You know, make the choice to be that higher vibration. But we got one more question, and Mike actually sent me a question on this. Can I make a layer using river rock, lava rock, and expanded shale? And this is for the base layer of the horizontal soil system.
River rock is fine. Just don't get smooth. So no, actually, river rock's not good. You want crushed. The smooth, when they're polished like that, bacteria can't mine them. The lava rock's okay because it's got pores. All right. Mm-hmm. And the last thing, I love expanded shale, but I think what I would recommend you do is sprinkle a layer of that on top of the sand, because as that breaks down, it may affect the ability for organic matter to get in, because it expands and it breaks down. You're creating pockets in the horizon, and so if it expands in a way that allows organic matter to get down in there, that's not a good thing, because it's going to go anaerobic. The roots are fine, because the roots will be dissolved very quickly by the biology down there, and the sand will just cave back in again. So I don't worry about wormholes. I don't worry about roots. But I do, you know, recommend that you really water that sand in, make sure there's no pockets. And then I would love that. Hell, I'd even blend the expanded clay into the A horizon, or expanded, what is it? Jesus Christ, I'm tired. Expanded shale. Expanded shale. Okay. Yeah, expanded shale is amazing, amazing material.
But not in that horizon.
I would not recommend the horizon. It just could. There's too many potential problems with that. You know, as time goes, you don't ever want to replace that. That's the whole goal of it. Is you build it once and you live the rest of your life without touching it. Yeah. So you don't want to
make sure you have the sand in there, because that's helping to stop those particles from moving in.
Yep. Yeah. It's called a sand filter for a reason. It filters. It keeps everything on the surface.
Yeah. So that's it for questions, Leighton. I guess you can go, and I know you're not feeling well. You're sneezing and coughing, and
dude, this is all got to do. It's all got to do with pharmaceuticals. Like, I don't get sick ever, and you know, I'm on these pharmaceuticals. I've been hacking. You know, I'm not getting congestion. They're screwing me up more than they're helping me. And I just met with my PCP last week, and I'm like, look, we got to change this up. I don't like these ones. So I've got a new one down at CVS, but right now my focus is shifting away from the pharmaceuticals, because they're really not helping that much, and doubling up on the herbs and the mushroom extracts that I'm taking, to see if I double or triple that, if it'll be all right. And I got permission from my herbologist. She said, yeah, none of these are going to have a conflict with either the pharmaceuticals you're taking or your bodily function, although you will have to go through a shift in your gut biome, which, I'm going through that too.
Well, and have you talked to the lady that has the elderberry? Are you still doing the elderberry syrup?
I have not reached out to her. I'm spending a small fortune on these other ones. Again, I think the goal is that once I figure it out, like we've dialed it in pretty well. Like I'm pretty much confident that this is mostly plaque built up inside my veins or in my arteries. And it's not due to what I would call, regular hypertension. So hypertension is that your heart is beating so fast to move the blood through your system. I don't have that problem. As soon as I get my heart rate up, my BP comes down. So that tells me it's something to do with plugging. I've done all the blood work, multiple different tests, everything from metabolite testing. I'm doing all this stuff on the side, but I'm sharing it with my primary care physician as well as my herbologist. And the herbologist I'm working with, I love her. She's sweet. She's Cheddar Bob's wife.
Cool.
Right?
Cool.
Yeah, he's another cat we should probably get on at some point in the future. But he was always fun to chop it up with.
Yeah, definitely. Well, guys, I think we'll end the show earlier. I'll talk to Leighton after the show on a couple of different things. But next week, we have Gardner Scott from the Gardner Scott channel coming back on to give us an update on how his garden is going. And, of course, he had his book last year come out. So you guys are going to want to check out Gardner Scott's book. But anyway, guys, love you very much. If you have the ability, hit that join button, become a defender of the biology. You have different levels you can choose and help out the channel so we can keep doing this, keep bringing you useful and proper information on how to grow healthy crops that you can consume to help with your physical health. And that's really what it boils down to: saving the soil, saving the plants, saving the animals, which we are part of that animal species. And, everything gets healthy, and then we can all be happy. And then our vibrations are going to rise up, and then everything's going to be fantastic.
Oh, man. And Ken, as always, thanks for all the effort that you put on behind the scenes to make this happen every week. And I did speak to Bob. I told him to book 2 episodes. We're going to have to go very, very deep with this guy. So I told him, figure out, I told him to email you, get the link, and then pick back-to-back sessions so that we can go down the rabbit hole. This guy's really interesting, my friend. Really interesting.
Well, I actually had somebody reach out to me through the channel that wants to talk about endo and ecto mycorrhizae, and wanted the companies that you had suggested on the last show. And I was thinking, do I send them to those people, or do I send them to Bob? Because, when I was talking to Bob for that half hour, it was like, okay, this sounds like some pretty good stuff. And I told him to send you a sample.
Yeah, we didn't get that far, but it's way beyond those 2 species.
Okay.
Way beyond what he's doing.
Yeah.
So.
Anyway, guys, that's coming up, and you guys are going to be amazed at what Bob has come up with and what he's doing and the information.
What he's done. What he's done.
Yes. All right, guys, I'm going to end the stream there. So me and Leighton can talk, but we'll see you guys on Wednesday for Gardens the Untold Story with Andy Lopez. Thursday, the ladies from Chiropractic is Sexy come on. Sundays, we have Dr. Ruffin, Paula Ruffin, who's been on TED Talk a couple of times. She's doing shows on our channel every Sunday. So there's lots coming up, guys. So keep in touch. Make sure you're subscribed. I know a lot of people have been unsubscribed. Check that you have the description, that the notification bell has been clicked on, so you get the notifications for the shows coming up. But peace out, everybody. Love you all.